great to see everyone. The other element as well to highlight, many of you are probably used to this type of forum now and this type of event. But if you're not, just as a reminder, if you could please keep your microphones muted throughout the session, particularly as there's quite a lot of people on this call, and it will enable the speakers to be heard and the presentations to be seen. But leading on from that, I just want to highlight the opportunity for questions during this session, because there still will be a significant amount of time put aside for questions. So what I'd like to encourage everyone to do throughout the session is, if you have a question that comes up at all, feel free to use the chat function to write any question that you have, particularly as the presenters are presenting their various slides, things that might come up that you think you'd really like to ask about. By all means, write them in that chat function. And we have then got a dedicated section during this session where we will go through as many questions as possible and aim to answer as many of those as possible. So for those of you not familiar, there's an icon that says show conversation. If you click on that at the top of your screen, you then get a chat function that appears on the right hand side, and that should enable you to then write your various questions in there, presuming that yours is all set up in the same format as mine. But if not, hopefully you'll find the chat function one way or another. Hopefully everyone's familiar with it, but by all means, if those aren't familiar with this technology, we'll all get through it together. So if somebody can't access something for whatever reason, by all means, feel free to ask for some help if you need it. So before we move on, I just want to introduce a few people for this session. So we've got some various speakers who are going to present on a number of topics. We've got Peter Belk from Business in the Community as the Campaign Director. So welcome to Peter. We've got Lizzie Hiron, Chief Operating Officer from our utilities business. And also working in the background, we've got Anna O'Leary, Governance Assistant from our society. And Anna's helping with all the background stuff that's going on, and also will assist in our question and answer session a bit later on. So welcome to you all. Also want to highlight one of the real big things we're trying to achieve from today's session is to get your feedback as members on what you want us to focus on from an environmental point of view over the next 5 years. And I will unfold what that means as we move on and move through the slides. But with that in mind, it's really important to understand that all of your views are really important during today's session, and feel free to share your views and your thoughts of what you want us to focus on, particularly on the focus of environment. Looking at there's no right or wrong answer, and feel free to build on others' ideas. You may see things appearing in the presentations or in the chat that you think that's a really good idea, and you can build on that. And feel free to be really open and provide your feedback, because this is what this session is certainly all about. So first of all, I'd just like to play a very short video. Just to point out the videos, there are a few videos throughout these slides, and those of you that perhaps have got a slower streaming service for whatever reason may not always see the video clearly, but I hope you all do. But no worries if you don't, because as I said, this is being recorded and it will be available at a later date as well. So here's the first video. This provides a bit of background on our society, particularly those maybe new to the Mid-Counties Co-operative, but also a useful reminder for those more familiar as well. Okay, so that provided some background around our society, and hopefully that was useful for you to all see. We're also keen, particularly for those of you on social media, for you to share the things that we're talking about during today's session and show that we're really talking about these important issues. So feel free to use your own social media channels and talk about the great stuff that we've talking about today and the things that we're doing. We'd really appreciate that to help continue to raise awareness. So just to run through what we're going to do really over the next hour or so. So in a moment, I'm going to provide some background details and around the session aims, what we're looking to try and achieve here. We're then going to discuss some of the things that the Mid-Counties Cooperative are currently doing around the environment and also through our utilities arm as well. We've then got business in the community, Peter Belt talking some broader societal trends when it comes to the environment. Then, as I mentioned, we've got the opportunity for the questions and answers, so feel free to use that chat function to do that. And then we're going to finish off with some possibility thinking, which I'll talk us through when we get to that stage. So this session actually forms a number of events that we've got leading up to the AGM, and there are some very specific ones that are around the broader topic of sustainability. And what we're using this information for is to help shape our longer term sustainability plans. So this session forms part of that process, and all of the ideas we get from yourselves today will help kickstart our stakeholder alignment program to help develop our sustainability 5-year plan. So I think the great thing about this session is every piece of information that you give us as members will then go into our thinking when it comes to shaping our 5-year plans when it comes to environment. And we'll look at these at a later date with a focused group of stakeholders to try and develop some ambitious targets around that. So a really important stepping stone in us achieving our 5-year ambitions around this topic. I think when it comes to sustainability, there are a number of definitions that people talk about around sustainability. And one thing we're focused on as a society, is a definition that we're using, is how we're creating a positive impact on people's lives for the long term. So when we're talking about sustainability and the ideas that are generated today, I'd really like you all just to consider that phrase and think about how we can do that and the ideas that we develop. And also ensuring that no one is left behind. So how can we ensure that with the ideas that we develop today, perhaps the feedback and some of the questions, that we're always considering what we do and how can we ensure that everybody has an opportunity around these particular areas. And what we hope to achieve at the end of this and at the end of our planning that will then take place over the next few weeks and few months is a truly member-led sustainability 5-year plan. And as I said, this strand is very much focused on the environment element of that. So what we can do, and the slides will hopefully showcase the types of things we're talking about around the environment and get you thinking around those particular topics. So one of the key things for today is to really encourage you all to think big and think about any possibility that you think we could include when it comes to the environment. And to help us do that, we actually asked our little pioneers from our co-op childcare nurseries on their thoughts of what things could look like in the future to help inspire us. So here's a short video with some of the views of our little pioneers on that topic.
What would you like to be when you grow up? A golfer.
Fireman. A princess.
And a princess.
If you were in charge of the world, what would you do?
Save the batteries. Save the batteries. And I'll pick up all the rubbish on the floor. And I even saw some rubbish in a little stream on the two sides.
Oh no.
That's my nanny and granddad.
What would you like to be when you grow up?
I'll be a superhero.
You want to be a superhero? What about you, Toby?
I'll be Spider-Man.
You want to be Spider-Man?
How do you think we can save the planet?
By not wasting the planet.
Yeah?
By not using the electricity so much.
When you grow up, what would you like to be?
I want to be a ballerina. I like to be a ballerina.
If you was in charge of the world, what would you do?
Tell people what to do.
How can we look after each other better?
Cuddling.
And hopefully that's some really inspiring ideas from our little pioneers there to get us thinking and thinking big about what we could possibly achieve, and think about that when we come to the possibility session towards the end of this. So the first thing I'm going to do now is start talking about the types of things that we are doing at the Mid-Counties Cooperative. So I'm going to do a few slides here on our approach to protecting the environment, what the Mid-Counties Cooperative are focusing on, and what our recent achievements and actions are around this particular topic. And the thing I want to highlight first of all is a really important element of our environmental activity and our strategy are our members. And we really want to ensure all the time that our members are at the heart of what we do and are providing feedback to us on what they want our society to focus on, so we can make a real difference to the environment and the differences that our members want us to do. And we've tried to do that in a number of ways, whether it's through member surveys, whether it's through events. World Environment Day last year, we carried out an event to get feedback from members on key issues. And that's what today's session is all about as well, to really get that feedback on what you want us to focus on over the next 5 years. The other key element here is the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'll talk about quite a lot throughout the slides. Now, the UN goals are really important for a responsible business to really take action on. And through the International Cooperatives Alliance, co-ops all around the world pledged to support these goals a number of years ago. And last year, the UK Co-op Retail Society has also made a joint statement to support these goals. And I think it's really important this for the Mid-Counties Cooperative, is even as an independent local society, we really are making a difference on a global scale. And we've got some great contacts and networks that we're really making the most of to try and share this best practice on that global scale. And just some examples I've got here on this slide that really show that. So at the end of last year and earlier this year, we were heavily involved in the launch of the World Co-op Monitor, and our Chief Values Officer, Pete Westall, was actually invited to moderate the launch session of that event. And we also featured thoroughly throughout the report around our activity as a business around climate action and our response to COVID. And it's a great example of our society really making a difference on that global scale. More recently, we're really proud also to be invited to present at the Euro Co-op International Summit event, looking at circular economy and sustainable consumption. And there we were able to talk about our activity around One Change and encouraging people to make a difference. And again, I'll talk about some of these things as we go on, but really proud to be able to do this and showcase Mid-Counties on that global scale. And the examples continue even further. Last year, on International Day of Co-ops, we were invited to present to the UN and the ICA on our activity around climate action. We do a lot of work with business in the community through the various networks, and actually we complete the Responsible Business Tracker through BITC, which provides us feedback on exactly how we're getting on against all of those sustainable development goals. And on a local and national level, we work with people like the Association of Convenience Stores. And last year, our CEO, Phil Ponsonby, presented at their national conference around our businesses activity around sustainability and how we're at the heart of the community, really supporting as that ecosystem in the community. So we've got some great networks and we really are playing our part on that local, national and international scale. And really recently, we're really proud to have been awarded the Sustainable Leaders Awards, as was mentioned in the video earlier. Really proud to have won Business of the Year and also the social sustainability element to that too. Very much for our response to COVID, but also as a result of our ongoing work around climate action. So how have we achieved these awards and why are we having the opportunity to showcase on a national level and an international level? Here's how, and I'll go through some details. So first of all, for those who aren't familiar with how we operate our environmental approach at the Mid-Counties Cooperative, first thing I want to point out is we have an environmental steering group in place. So when I mention it's core that members are really at the heart of what we do and our colleagues as well, the environmental steering group enables us to achieve this because on the steering group, we've got colleagues from across all of our trading groups, representation from our board and membership engagement committee, but also, and I think really importantly over the last year, we've also added representation from our Young Cooperators network. So it means we're not just getting the views of our members and our colleagues, we're also getting the views of our future members and those inspirational people for the future, making sure that we're making a difference. And there's a number of these steering group members on the call today, and I would certainly like to thank you all very much for all of your support to date in helping shape our environmental activity, and really do appreciate that. And the steering group focuses on ensuring that our society reduces our environmental impact, raises awareness amongst members and colleagues around what we're doing and engages them to make a difference. And also, as I mentioned, really helps the society focus around supporting things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So the best way to describe how we take action is pretty much around our One Change programme, because this epitomises, I think, everything I've been talking about so far around ensuring that members are engaged and sharing best practice. So I'm going to talk through One Change and then talk about some of the impacts we've made as a business as a result of One Change. So we launched One Change a couple of years ago now, and very much with the aim of a lot of people find climate change and taking action around climate change quite intimidating and don't really know where to start. So the concept of One Change was that anybody could start somewhere and they could have one idea and one thing that people could start doing. So we encourage through online pledges and various events and activities for members to just come up with one idea that they could do differently. But then I think the really important thing about the One Change programme, we then collated all of those responses and then played them back to members and actually identify opportunities for collaboration and synergies to drive that forward even further and make even bigger impact. We then use the concept to ask members the one change they want us to make, as previously mentioned, and this is helping us shape our environmental agenda and strategy. And then through the various networks I've talked about, we've been able to share the One Change programme with co-ops all around the world to help really move this forward and drive this type of campaign activity. So what are the impacts that have been achieved as a result of One Change in our environmental activity? Now, I'm going to talk about that in two particular strands. The first is waste reduction, and the second one will be energy saving. And these two strands are really important for our society because these are actually two of our most significant impacts. So therefore, they are our society steering wheel measures when it comes to environment. And these are areas we really focus on. So I'm going to talk through these two and how we're making a difference. So when we talk about the One Change programme, as I say, we launched it to try and encourage and engage members to make a change. And we did this through online events and surveys and that type of thing. But we also did it through signage within our stores to encourage people, where possible, to make sustainable purchases, such as using a bag for life or compostable bag. We then also engaged with our environmental ambassador, Cal Major, who is very well known within the UK for her stand-up paddleboard activity and tackling plastics from the rivers. And with Cal, and amongst many other things that Cal has done, and with Cal, we've carried out a range of events and activities with partner schools and members to really inspire and engage people in that change. And even during lockdown, over the difficult period of being able to carry out interactive events, we were still able to carry out a virtual engagement event with Cal along the River Severn, where Cal circumnavigated the River Severn, tackled litter from that river, and we engaged members online throughout that entire journey and had various quizzes and zero waste pledges throughout the programme. Another good example of the One Change programme, through the pledges we received from members, a number of members really wanted to make a difference in their communities to tackle litter and tidy up their local environment. So as a result of that, we were able to connect those members together and set up these community tidy ups in our 20 regional community areas. And in World Environment Day, not last year, the year before, we were able to connect all of them together on one day, and we had over 700 volunteers tidying up the rivers and tidying up the local environment. And a lot of those groups have continued to operate where possible and continue doing their community tidy up activity. The picture in the bottom right hand corner for us is a really inspiring one, because this is the Eco Bricks programme. When we launched One Change, a number of members fed back to us to say they'd really like to be able to use waste plastics for something useful. And the concept of Eco Bricks was presented to us through the One Change campaign. And Eco Bricks is using waste plastic bottles filled with other waste plastics to form bricks, which can then be put together to make useful structures. So working with the local community in the Cotswolds area, we worked with Fairy Tale Farm, our community partner, to build a turkey shed, which is the picture in the background there, made out of Eco Bricks. And local schools, local members, local colleagues, local community groups all got involved in that and helped create that structure. We've also used it in other concepts as well, and we look to hopefully carry that on as we start coming out of lockdown and as we can start doing that type of activity. Another keen bit of feedback from members for us who want change is that they clearly wanted us to eliminate single-use plastic bags from our food stores. So we did that and replaced them with compostable bags, and that's saving 8 million plastic bags per year. We're also aware from members who want more opportunities to perhaps have refill options and reduce their plastic footprint. So within a selection of our stores, we've got a milk vending. We've also got refillable ranges as well. And we're looking to see wherever we can put this type of technology in place, we will do so. Another element that's really important to our members and also society in general in tackling climate change is food waste. And that's why for a number of years now, we've ensured we've sent all of our food waste from our food stores to anaerobic digestion, which produces renewable energy. We've also got schemes in place within our stores to try and reduce the amount of food waste that's being produced. Another key achievement for us is we've really tried hard to drive our recycling levels across our operations. And that's why we've been able to increase that to 99% from what was 21% in 2010. So some really strong work that's gone on in those particular areas. Now onto the energy saving side of things and how we're using One Change to support this angle. So at the start of this year, we launched a New Year's resolution campaign with members to encourage members to complete an online environmental footprint calculator so they could measure their environmental footprint, and then encouraged our members to make pledges to reduce that footprint. And I think the important thing for us around this is we want also to try and mobilise members and provide opportunities for them to reduce that footprint. And one of the great examples we've got here is our Co-op Community Power Tariff. And I won't talk any more about that because Lizzie will be talking about that later, but it's a really good example of how we're helping members live low carbon lifestyles. We're also trying to encourage the uptake of electric vehicles by having electric car charging points in selected car parks as well within our food stores. Also within our food retail, within our funeral estate, we were one of the first businesses to implement electric hearse into our estate as well, so further supporting that low carbon technology. And then if you look into our own operations around energy saving, this has been a real focus for us for a number of years. And that's why over the last 5 years, we've reduced our energy usage by 11%. And we've done this in a number of ways. A real focus has been around colleague awareness and engagement and education. And we've done this by ensuring colleagues are aware of the importance of saving energy in the workplace and also how to do that, such as energy saving site shutdown procedures and that type of activity. Also through our property projects such as doors and chillers and LED lighting within stores and our trading sites, we've been able to drive down that energy saving across those sites. And moving forward, we really want to build on this and have an ambitious target of halving our greenhouse gas emissions over the next 5 years, which I'll come on to talk about in a bit more in a moment. So moving on to our targets ahead. So this final slide that I've got to talk through is very much giving an overview of the sorts of things we look to want to try and achieve over the next 5 years. And I hope this might just enable to get you thinking about some of the things that we could consider as a society. And I certainly don't want to restrict your thinking to these strands because the end is a possibility session, but these are some ideas, the types of things that we are looking at moving forwards. So if you look from an operational impact point of view, we're very much aware around the race to achieve net zero carbon across the world, across countries are trying to achieve it. There's various announcements that go out regularly around achieving net zero carbon. And as responsible businesses, we need to play our part in the space. So we've got a real focus to really drive down our greenhouse gas emissions with a target of trying to halve it over the next 5 years and reduce our waste footprint by 1/3. I talked about the One Change campaign and how we've engaged 1,000 pledges, which is good for members, but we want to really ramp that up over the next few years and engage over 100,000 members in that One Change pledge. But not just pledges, we want to be able to mobilise that change, whether it's community energy, compostable bags or electric car charging or electric vehicles. We want to really enable and mobilise members to make a difference. And the other angle we've got is a great opportunity to build on the international work that we've got in place with people like the ICA, ISET, which is International Cooperative Think Tank, World Co-op Monitor, Euro Co-op, all those links that we've got. We really want to build on that and see where that can take us to helping achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So I'm now going to hand over to Lizzie to give an overview from a utility side of things. So Lizzie, over to you, and I'll drive the slides.
Okay, thanks, Mike. That was great. I'm afraid I don't have any young children with any such amazing stories. So I'm just going to talk to you about our utilities trading group now. So I feel like I can't live up to expectations there. But I'm Lizzie, as Mike said, and I joined the society back in July last year. So relatively new to the world of cooperatives. The slide you can see now is really because I wanted to set some positioning about how we've created the utility strategy and why I'm going to share with you some of the projects that we're working on. And really, as a cooperative, I think that we're uniquely positioned to be successful in this place, mainly down to our brand heritage and our aligned society values. And both of the core markets within energy and telecoms, which is really where what we encompass within utilities, remain really ripe for a cooperative presence. And really, the global pandemic has only underlined the need for home services and ensuring that we balance affordability and convenience against sustainability and ethics. One of the biggest emerging trends, if we could move on to the next slide, Mike, that would be great, is around eco-conscience. It's the highest emerging trend and it's ranked first in the UK and third globally. Making choices that are ethical, sustainable, and reduce environmental impact will continue to grow with importance. And there's some statistics that we've got from some research that we've done across the society. A report found that 69% of consumers will now consider buying an electric car. Nielsen Global Corporate Sustainability Report found that 66% of the people surveyed were willing to pay more for sustainable goods. So there's been a dramatic evolution in the ethical consumerism, with 60% of consumers considering the environment, sustainability and ethics when making purchases. And this was a survey back in spring 2020. And in the last 12 months, the Soil Association has quoted that in the UK, organic and sustainable products have seen an increase in 10%. And a 15% increase in local purchasing. So we've taken all of this insight and all of these market trends and built our utilities strategy around it. Our strategy is around enabling our members to adopt socially responsible and low carbon lifestyles. So if we could just flick on, that's lovely, thank you. For those of you, and I know there's some of you who joined our utilities session earlier, we incorporate a number of areas. So we have your Co-op mobile, your Co-op broadband, your Co-op energy and your Co-op business solutions. And our key focus in the energy space is around our community power tariff. As it stands today, we are the only UK tariff entirely powered by community energy generation. So we now work with, as of yesterday, 100 community energy generators, and we buy enough power generated from renewable local sources to power over 50,000 homes. We also work with Fairphone, and we are one of their longest standing, biggest partners within the UK. And this is around driving an ethical mobile strategy, ensuring that we can remove the waste that comes through the production and the distribution of mobile phones, but also the fact that most people only keep a mobile phone for 2 to 3 years. The Fairphone is actually built to ensure that we can keep them for longer, a modular build to really remove waste, both in the supply chain and in the longevity of the telephone. So if we move on, there are some specific projects that I'm going to share with you today, and I'm going to focus firstly on electric vehicles. Mike touched on it earlier, but we are looking at a number of strategies across EV. We're looking at how we can encourage our colleagues to drive electric vehicles. So we're currently piloting a salary sacrifice scheme to enable our colleagues to access competitive pricing for leasing of an electric vehicle. We're then, once we've tested that pilot, we're going to roll out more broadly across the society. We're then also going to work with other partners and business customers to offer salary sacrifice EV leasing linked to our community power tariff to really help people live a low carbon lifestyle. And we're also investigating the feasibility of partnering with various suppliers to enable our members to access EV leasing in the future as well. Alongside EV leasing, we're working on charge points. So we are currently in the process of looking at 10 of our stores and upgrading 16 of the charge points and adding in some additional to really enable some of the charging black spots across our trading estate to be eliminated. We'll be designing these EV charge points with unique member benefits and discounts to really ensure that we're supporting our members to adopt those EVs. We're also working on a community power tariff that will enable competitively priced home charging for our members so they can charge on the road and at home. And we're also investigating the possibility of on-street charging. And an exciting item we talked about earlier was around the prospect of shared EV vehicles, so that you can actually share within a community a vehicle and utilise that as and when you need it. And as we move forward, we'll be linking this EV charging to the renewable generation that we implement across our stores. Moving on then, I also wanted to share with you an update around Co-op Community Energy. So we've recently rebranded our joint venture with Octopus to Unity, and this venture is underpinned by 4 key objectives. We are here to innovate through the delivery of groundbreaking community energy products. We are going to bring community energy groups together through collaboration. We will facilitate community energy growth and development, and we will inspire more community energy partners, members, and awareness. Some of the projects that we've worked on as part of your Co-op Energy and Unity have been around a trading dividend. So we buy community energy directly from Westmill, our community energy partner. We then have enabled their members to switch to our community power tariff to use the energy directly generated from their community energy scheme. And we've now recently launched the ability to pay their virtual dividend back through their energy bill direct to those community energy members. So the generation, the supply and the demand are in one true green circular economy. We're also working on a member investment opportunity, installing solar panels on a store roof and enabling our members to buy in and invest in that solar generation without the current barriers that exist, removing the 250 minimum investment and enabling our members to invest over a longer time period. For example, £20 a month for 12 months to enable them to invest in the solar generation and then receive the dividends and the earnings from that generation back through their energy bill. As I said earlier, we partner with 100 community energy partners, and as we signed our 100th PPA this week, and we are really excited to be able to power so many homes with truly green, locally sourced community energy. And last but not least for me, if we move on, I should touch on telecoms. It's not an area where you often talk about environmental sustainability and telecoms together. However, we feel we are ripe and ready to be able to green up this environment. So we're working on carbon neutral broadband, working with partners like Zen who have carbon neutral supply chains, promoting fibre replacement for broadbands, which has a much lower environmental impact that really gives us an opportunity to move from carbon neutral to a carbon positive product set. Along the way, not forgetting that environmental sustainability comes with community sustainability. So providing a community network, which is a broadband tariff we're launching in the summer that will enable our members to feed in virtual community benefit, which will give us an ability to discount or provide free broadband to those underserved within the community. And from a mobile perspective, our Fairphone partnership is progressing, and we launch the Fairphone 4 later this year. We're also looking to transition our members from traditional copper connectivity, which has a high environmental impact and is also legacy technology, and support our members on the transition to voice over IP solutions to enable nobody to get left behind in the technology evolution. And last but not least, we're investigating how we can develop our elder mobile strategy and refurbished mobile strategy, really looking at how we can recycle handsets and ensure that our members use the handsets more sustainably for longer. So finally, from me, our strategy is all around making sure that we enable you, our members, to live socially responsible and low carbon lifestyles through the products and services that we offer, and deliver you long-term value for you, our members, and also our community and the environment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lizzie. Some really exciting initiatives there, and really proud to be part of a business that has these in place. So thanks, Lizzie. That's really great stuff. I'm now going to go to Peter Belk, who I introduced at the beginning of the session, and I'd just like to say I'm really thankful for Peter and Business in the Community for being involved in this session, and this will give us a really good insight of some of those broader trends when it comes to environmental issues. So again, Peter, I'll hand over to you, and I will drive your slides for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike, and yeah, thanks, Lizzie. Really interesting to hear about all the work that you're doing. Just really impressive and very much kind of member and customer focused, which is exactly what we would hope responsible businesses to be doing. Yeah, just for those of you that don't know, Business in the Community is an NGO, a charity in the UK that runs a network of about 600 businesses, focusing on engaging business leaders and those kind of at the coalface in businesses, so sustainability practitioners and others, to embed sustainability and think about the global goals that we're all trying to tackle in a way that brings them kind of business benefit, but also tackles the big sort of social and environmental problems that we're all facing into at the moment. And Mid Counties Co-op has been a long-standing member of ours and works with us on a number of different agendas, as Mike's mentioned. So I'm Pete Belk. I lead our circular economy campaign at Business in the Community. So just wanted to talk today a little bit about some of the kind of bigger trends that we're seeing a lot of our members facing into at the moment. A number of them have already been touched on today. So I'm loath to try and come out with too many sort of scary facts and figures, but I think that hopefully that kind of illustrates some of the reasons behind why we feel it's really urgent for businesses, governments, civil society to come together and try to tackle this collectively. And whilst the challenge is absolutely enormous, and this next slide, which is a grid kind of from the World Economic Forum, who every year in January come out with a list of the top risks facing our economies as sort of determined by business leaders and other kind of economic leaders. You can see that the green ones, which are the environment or nature related risks, are all in the top 5 for the last 5 years and increasingly becoming so. And obviously we see infectious diseases, so COVID in 2021 has made it into the top 5 for the first time in many years. But you can see that this really is front and center for businesses in terms of the cost that it can impact on climate, on supply chains through disruption from things like extreme weather events, from climate action failure, so different nations around the world not necessarily pulling their weight, or governments not supporting us to develop more resilient economies that can handle the changes that are likely to be coming. So we think it's just really important for businesses to be all playing their part in this space. So going beyond the kind of some of the risks and the scary bits, Mike, onto the next slide, please. We also think that there's a really strong business case beyond just kind of doing the right thing and tackling the climate emergency. We've actually seen a big shift, and the video kind of alluded to the fact that young people are really grasping the urgency around climate change. And we see millennials, so those are kind of people generally between the age of sort of late 20s and sort of late 30s, increasingly seeing that business needs to play a leading role in shaping the response to some of the problems we've just heard about. And encouragingly, the majority, so nearly 70% of consumers, are willing to pay more for sustainable products. So actually, there is an opportunity for businesses to start thinking about how they change their business models and change the things that they sell and the way that they engage with their customers to actually generate profit and to stay competitive, even though these challenges are going to be difficult and potentially costly to tackle. But yeah, it's not something we should necessarily be worried by in the business community, as there are opportunities there as well. So next slide, please, Mike. And again, in terms of the kind of risk versus opportunity, so the combined costs here, and you can see the Carbon Disclosure Project, who gather a lot of the data around the carbon and the climate emergency, estimate a kind of combined cost of the climate emergency to the biggest companies of around £1 trillion between now and 2030. But they see in the same time period, there is an opportunity, a kind of a business opportunity, to create $12 trillion worth of value from facing into the various challenges we're talking about. So again, there is an economic case to be making this transition, and the businesses that lead the way will be the first to kind of reap those rewards. Next slide, please, Mike. So in order to kind of mitigate those risks that we've heard about and to kind of make the most of the opportunities that are out there, we think that businesses need to really be tackling kind of 5 key systemic transformations. So it's you know, we've heard that our society and our economies need to rapidly transform to move away from a fossil fuel based economy towards an economy that is low carbon, is restorative, is reducing its impact on nature, whilst also creating a space where human well-being can be prioritized. And where our societies aren't being impacted or are protected from some of the bigger risks, environmental risks that are out there. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is working collectively. So businesses working collaboratively within their sectors. So retailers working alongside retailers, retailers working with their supply chains, sectors kind of working alongside government and civil society to really shape the solutions together. And the first real shift that we think businesses, and particularly within the retail and food retail space, need to think about is to move towards more sustainable food systems. So the global food system accounts for about a third of all of the greenhouse gas emissions that are created every year. The majority of those come through agriculture and sort of food production. And that's largely because we transitioned, particularly after the Second World War, towards a very kind of industrial, fossil fuel-based agriculture system. And it's been really, really effective at actually feeding the 7 or so billion people that are here on the planet. But it has come at a cost. We've seen that the energy that goes into creating nitrogen fertilizers, into pesticides, into the various inputs that support very kind of productive farming methods have come at the expense of nature. And we've seen huge losses in biodiversity, in virgin rainforests, in different ecosystems that have been impacted by the rapid expansion of industrial agriculture. And we'll have all seen images of the Amazon rainforest and the soy and beef sort of expansion that's impacting some of those ecosystems that play a very important role in balancing our global climate systems. So there's a real kind of need to move towards a food system that is more sustainable, both in terms of production and moving towards what we would call regenerative agriculture, whereby you minimize the amount that you till the soil, you reduce your man-made inputs and replace those with natural systems, but also to move towards more sustainable diets. And it's something we're increasingly hearing, the kind of the debate around beef and veganism, and how much we all need to kind of think about how much we eat. And particularly in the West, we've become very used to eating a lot of beef, red meats and so on, that whilst they're kind of culturally significant for us, they do come at a cost that perhaps we're not seeing, or that we're not kind of yet kind of fully understanding of across society. So there's a need to think about how we as businesses can help our customers to start to transition towards more sustainable diets. And there is also evidence that more sustainable diets can be healthier diets as well. And then the other bit I would just mention here is that a third of all of the food that we produce on Earth is wasted. And actually, if the food that was wasted was a country, and the emissions associated with that, it would be the third biggest source of emissions after America and China. So we have to, and again, Mike touched on this, there's a lot of work being done to look at food waste. 70% of all of the food wasted occurs in our homes. But how can the co-op, or how can businesses start to support us as consumers to waste less and have less of an impact that way? The second big shift is around energy, and thinking about how we continue to support our economic system and to do the things that require energy, but to do it in a lower carbon way that's less dependent on fossil fuels. And we've seen in the UK huge advances as we've kind of phased out coal power stations and moved towards more wind and solar generation. But we need to see organizations that consume a lot of energy starting to invest in a more rapid sort of shift towards renewable energy as well. And again, great to see, Lizzie, all the work that you've been doing around your community energy projects. That's exactly the direction that we see things going, is towards a more decentralized energy grid, where lots of small pockets of solar panels or wind turbines or other forms of renewables feed into the grid at different points, and we look at a kind of a slightly different picture in terms of how we support ourselves with energy. With that comes the need for increased amounts of energy storage. The wind doesn't blow all the time, so we'll need to look at batteries and other methods of storing energy as well. But then before we even think about kind of transitioning to renewables, we also need to think about the most efficient sort of form of energy, which is that we don't use. So turning things off, changing our technologies to consume less energy. I know that a lot of the retailers are looking at things like fridge systems that are based on Formula One car design, so that there's a much more efficient flow of air around chiller cabinets and less cold air is wasted out of the front of chillers, for example. All of those sorts of projects will help to reduce the actual demand of the energy grid, and make it easier for us to therefore kind of move over to renewable technologies down the line as well. So lots of work to be done there. The third area is around our buildings, and I'm quoting lots of statistics at you, but I think they hopefully serve to give a sense of the scale and the kind of urgency of some of the challenges. In the building space, our built environment, so buildings, roads, infrastructure, accounts for about 40% of the emissions in the UK. And a lot of that comes from the operation of those buildings, so linking back to energy efficiency and the way that they're designed to allow for natural or other forms of cooling and heating. But also we need to think about the design of buildings and how much carbon goes into the materials that we put into buildings. And that also means not making new buildings and thinking about how we can be more creative with the existing stock of stores or homes or the other kind of built environment assets that we have an influence over. One of the projects we've been working on actually with another part of the co-op group is looking at how to use procurement to drive more circular fit outs of retail stores. So looking at which parts of a store fit out could be removed. Do you need a plastic flooring, for example, or could you have polished concrete? Do you need to include as many shelves, or could you put the shelves on wheels so that they could be moved around for different promotional purposes and so on, and trying to think creatively about how we strip out some of the materials that go into a store. The next bit is about transport and how we get around, and that includes both logistics, our fleets, but also employee commuting and travel to and from retail stores and so on. And again, this is currently a very fossil fuel based part of our economy, and we think that businesses really need to start to move very quickly towards different forms of fuel within the transport mix. So looking at more uptake of electric vehicles. It comes with its own set of challenges because that sort of electric vehicles are still based on charging from a grid, and if that's not fully decarbonised, then there's still a kind of a carbon impact. But overall, we need to start redirecting our investment towards electric vehicles. Hydrogen is another form of energy that is being explored in this space as well. And there are organisations out there looking at methane, so turning kind of food waste into methane that can then be used to power larger vehicles like HGVs. And then the final piece is around, it is often a slightly overlooked area in terms of climate, in terms of emissions, which is the circular economy. So thinking about essentially products and materials. So the plastic, the petrochemicals, the metals, the wood, all of those virgin resources that we harvest from the earth and turn into products, and thinking about how much emissions are associated with those processes of extraction. I can see cement is one that's come up there. How do we reduce the demand for those materials in the first place? how do we redesign buildings? How do we redesign packaging? How do we redesign the vehicles? Every single type of product or material that we use to simply use less. But also, how do we capture those materials as they flow around the economy in order to get more value, more bang for the buck for each of those pieces? And it was great to hear Lizzie talking about the Fairphone, which is a really good example of a product that's been designed to be just to last longer and to get more use out of it, more value, and to prevent the need for buying whole new phones several times over. All of those small interventions will add up to a carbon saving. And Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who do a lot of work in this space, have estimated that roughly 45% of all of the emissions globally are linked to the extraction, creation, use or disposal, i.e. waste of materials and products. So it's a slightly more complex one to think about, but definitely something we need to embrace. And within the retail sector, we've seen examples of companies trying to remove packaging by looking at refillable stations within supermarkets. So customers bring in their own packagings that can be reused over and over. We've seen certain companies, I mean, IKEA, interestingly, yesterday came out with a new business model where they're enticing customers to actually take products back into the store, and they will give them some money back, often up to kind of half of the original price of the product, because they want to recapture those materials and feed them back into production, either by repairing and refurbishing or by turning them into another product that prevents the need to chop down trees or use plastic in other types of products. So I've canted through quite a few stats, figures, risks, opportunities, different ideas there, hopefully that kind of give us a bit of thought provocation as to how the Midlands Co-op can be embedding some of these ideas and seizing some of these opportunities over the next 5 years in your new strategy. But I'll stop there because I think I've run slightly over too. So thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Absolutely fascinating insight there, and really shows how important this issue is, and really interesting when you talk about the next generation. We've got an event tomorrow evening for our Young Cooperator Network where one of the focus topics is going to be climate action, because we know from feedback from our young cooperators that it's such a core area for them. So thanks very much for that insight. To keep us on track, we're going to go straight into the question and answer session, but just very quickly, just to let everyone know that at the end, when we do the possibility thinking session, if people do have a pen and paper to hand, it does help because it helps you jot down your ideas. So just giving you that heads up now, if you can grab one. But if you haven't, don't worry, because you can still do it without one as well. We can talk through that, but it's just useful. So I'm going to hand over to the question master, Anna, to go through some questions, if that's okay, Anna.
Yep, of course. So we've had a question come in from Luke, and he's asked whether Mid Counties has partnered with Zen for the full 20 years that we've resold wholesale broadband, or are they new to our co-op?
Okay, I think Lizzie, you okay with that one?
Yeah, Luke, in all fairness, I couldn't give you an exact number of years, but they are not specifically new. We work with a number of partners in this space, and they are one of the key partners. And one of the things we really like about them is obviously their B Corp status and the fact that they're really all around that carbon neutral supply chain. So it enables us to really partner strongly with them. We have worked with them for a number of years. I couldn't give you an actual year. There are some members of the team who might be more in the know than me, but it's a fair while, and we work with a number of other partners as well.
Brilliant. Hopefully that answers your question, Luke. So we've had another question come in from Robbins, and he's asked, can co-ops host a TerraCycle bin for plastic that is not possible to recycle curbside?
Yeah, I'll take that question, and thanks very much for the question, because I think the answer in principle is yes, because we would like to, wherever possible, provide our members with the opportunity to increase their recycling. And one thing we are doing across our food stores in the summer is implementing plastic film recycling facilities across our stores, which will be a great milestone for us, because it'll actually mean that our Co-op branded products will be 100% widely recyclable. So that's going to be great for us. Now, the TerraCycle scheme, I think, is a really good scheme. And I think the one thing that I'd like to try and do, if we can, is have a coordinated approach working with the relevant organisations that run the TerraCycle scheme. So we've just got a consistent approach across our sites of how we can support. So certainly in principle, we'd like to, and it's something that I'm looking at in the background at the moment to see how we can do that to help our members recycle. So the principle of it is yes, I think we've just got to work out the logistics of how we would do that.
Brilliant. We can see a couple of hands up, so I'll go for the first one that I saw. Apologies for pronunciation. Is Gatrad? You got a question?
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and thanks for inviting me. I'm from WhatsApp, World Against Single-Use Plastic. Just a couple of things based on the definition of sustainability, which is people's lives long-term and no one left behind. So looking at people's lives long-term, looking at health and well-being, which is where WhatsApp comes in. And my suggestion would be to the board on the 15th to say perhaps there'd be regular group of people that work with Co-op, associated with Co-op, to go out on litter picks, etc. So not only will it help their health and well-being, but it also helps the environment. Coming to the next one, no one left behind. We can involve the little pioneers to get involved, and perhaps litter picks could be provided by Co-op. So that's one section I want to sort of go and comments on. The second section is basically about proximity sensors. So as you go into a supermarket, or perhaps before you get to the door, something should remind you to say, please do not forget your bag in the car, because most of us, by the time we've got inside, do not want to go back to the car. And associated with that is there could be a suggestion that you could have a Co-op app which reminds you not to forget your bag in the car or whatever as soon as you enter Co-op. So I just wondered if those could be expanded on in terms of discussion, please.
Thank you, and really appreciate that feedback, and that's exactly what this session is about. It's about generating those ideas. So every idea that we get from today, we will look to do something within our planning to help shape our activity. I think with the community tidy up examples, really good examples, and actually on World Environment Day, the 5th of June, we're looking at starting to raise that awareness again amongst our members and colleagues around the opportunities to take part in community tidy ups. Clearly it's not been as easy to do that sort of thing collectively as teams up till now as we move out of lockdown, and I think it's a great idea again to link in with our little pioneers as well. So thanks very much for that. Certainly anything we can do to raise awareness and signpost members and again help them to help themselves live sustainably, I think are really good ideas. And through our work with Euro Co-op, we are aware of a number of really impressive apps that co-ops around Europe are using to help signpost and educate members, and we'll tap into that network as well to do some further research. But those ideas will certainly be taken away. So really thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
I can see Anne's hand up next. Anne Ransom. Give her another few seconds. If not, I'll go to a question. Another question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Anne.
The charging points in the car parks in the store car parks. Are there enough stores with big enough car parks to have cars sitting there for, I don't know how long it takes, 2 hours? Is it practical? I mean, it makes good sense, but is it practical?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Mike, if you like. But Anne, great question, actually. Is it practical? So there's a couple of things with it. One is we're going to start on the larger stores with bigger car parks. That's one thing. We're also looking at quite rapid chargers, and the intent is also that this is utilised as a bit of a top-up shop. So at a top-up charge whilst you're at the shop. So you can come and charge, and there'll be member discounts on that charging, and then you can pop and do your shopping and get back and have boosted your charge point, rather than overnight 12-hour slow charge. First of all, we'll be looking to install rapid chargers, and secondly, trying to encourage a bit more of a top-up type approach and enable our members to utilise some other methods for longer term full charging capabilities. So absolutely agree, it's not always practical, and that's why we're also looking at on-street possibilities and variety of other things, so that A, we don't block car parks when people need to drop in, and B, we can make charging accessible if people don't have private driveways and other things, really looking at all sorts of avenues there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll go to John next. I think he had his hand up next.
Hi there. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, that's great.
Yeah, one thing I've got involved with over the lockdown has been a local community repair cafe, which, I mean, it's something which is obviously limited by the lockdown, but it still functioned. And I've been amazed at how effective it is. And I'm sure that, like many people, if you go to a council, rubbish dump, you're appalled at the amount of stuff that is thrown out just because in many cases something trivial has stopped working. And as I say, I've been really impressed by how this has worked. And these are just run by volunteers, a bit hand to mouth. But I wonder if it's a sort of activity which could be supported by the co-op. And these don't take very much, but often it's a matter of just hiring local facilities, and really is very effective, because what is thrown away is just appalling to see.
Yeah, thanks. I'll pick that one up. I think the concept of it is fantastic, and it really ties into everything that Pete was talking around of circular economy, and having this type of community approach in place for that type of thing is really good. I think the opportunity we would potentially have, the Mid-Counties Co-operative, is through our regional community network. We've got 20 regional communities in place where we can link in with those types of local initiatives and activities. And it helps having those sort of local ambassadors on the ground who we've got localized funding we can put aside potentially for that type of activity, and also engage them in that regional community approach. So I would suggest any of those types of activities, and the one you mentioned, would be really interested to learn more about, and to see if there is an opportunity to tie in with our regional community network. So thanks for sharing that.
Okay, thank you.
Brilliant. I think it was Robin's hand up next.
Hi, thank you. One of the things I just wanted to explore a bit further was around the EV provision. Would you consider partnering with parish councils or with county councils on spaces that aren't necessarily co-op, but are adjacent or near to co-op, which we could be utilised and share costs and such like, or is that seen as too complex?
Hi there. Yeah, no, great suggestion. I think everything's worth exploring. We're relatively early on our evolution of our EV charging, looking at what we can do, linking that to community power. But absolutely, there are all sorts of opportunities that we'd like to consider. So it's one that we'll add to the list to investigate. Thank you.
Okay, maybe you can put Bletchington at the top of the list, because our parish council is seriously considering it. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to jump in only because of time, unfortunately, because we've got one more session to complete, and I think it's a great session because it will enable all the ideas that everybody on this call has got to capture them within our chat function. So I really appreciate all the questions everybody's put forward there. And I'll tell you what we'll do, Anna. If there is, we've got time for one more. So if you had one lined up, go for it, and then we'll move on.
Just having a look through now. I think Robin's mate asked a good question. How about you gain additional co-op points every time you bring your own bag, or additional points when you buy British/local? Could be a featured supplier.
Yeah, I think that's, again, a really good idea. We've got a lot of work going on around member rewards and opportunities to reward various types of purchases, and what a great opportunity to link in with responsible consumption and purchasing. So a really good idea for us to consider. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to move us on to the final part of this session. And as I've mentioned, this is our possibility thinking. Now, for those of you not familiar with possibility thinking session, don't worry, I will talk you through it. And the aim of this is to try and enable you to use the chat function to write down your ideas. And the aim for us is to try and establish what you want us to be focusing on and looking at over the next 5 years when it comes to the environment. And any idea can go in this chat, anything whatsoever when it comes to the environment. So it doesn't have to be a focused objective, a particular specific ambition, but it can be if you've got that. But these are just general ideas. So what I'm going to do, there's the slide on there at the moment. I'm going to talk through these questions anyway. And what you get with possibility thinking is I'll ask a question and then I'll leave some silence for a bit for you to just think about it yourself. So it doesn't require a verbal answer. It's for you to think about it in your own head. Maybe use a notepad to write down various things that you come into your head. And the thing with possibility thinking as well is I encourage you to write down anything that comes into your head that relates to the question, because often that leads to another idea and it spurs you on. And then at the end, I'll ask you to sort of think about prioritizing your ideas and literally writing them in the chat function, because we're going to download everything that's in that chat function at the end to use that in our planning. So the first question for you to think about in your heads and on your notepads: what do you want your co-op to focus on within this subject area of the environment over the next 5 years? And remember, anything's possible. We can be as ambitious as we want with these ideas. And I want you to consider, how will this help create a positive impact on people's lives for the long term? And linked with that, how can we ensure that no one is left behind? So thinking about your idea and just thinking ahead, what would your imagined future look like in 5 years' time? So if you were to go into the future in 5 years, what perhaps would look different? What's your imagined future for 5 years' time? And the last one on there is certainly for the more creative of us. If you could imagine a front page of a newspaper article in 5 years' time, what would you imagine it saying when showcasing the 5-year milestone? And now I'll just give you, I mean, great that people are putting this in the chat. Absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what I'm now going to invite you all to do. So carry on putting your ideas in the chat function. If you've got a list of things in front of you at the moment, you might want to prioritize some of them and think, right, this is 1 or 2 or 3 that we'd really want the Mid-Counties Co-operative to consider doing over the next 5 years. So I now invite you to do that and start putting that into the chat function on the screen for us. Okay, so just looking at some of the ideas that are coming in, I mean, these are absolutely fantastic. So thanks very much for everything we're getting here. I mean, a building made out of eco bricks, inspiring the next generation. Circular economy is key. A real range of some great stuff in here. Co-op shops generating electricity via solar, offer power to those who can't afford it. Cool. Yeah, it's some really good stuff coming in here. And so what we will do with all of this feedback and information, we'll use this to shape our 5-year planning, and this will go to a focused workshop to talk about how we can potentially build up ambitious targets, taking all these ideas into account. So by all means, keep pinging them into the chat as you're thinking of them, and keep putting them in there, because there's some really good ideas coming in here, and really appreciate all of the feedback you're giving us on that. So thanks very much. Now I'm just going to move us on to, but by all means keep putting your ideas in, because these are really good. So just to summarize, the next steps for us following this session, as I've mentioned, is to use all of the ideas that you provided us with to go towards a focused stakeholder session where we will work with members, community groups, colleagues, experts to pull this together into what would be our 5-year plan over the summer. So really appreciate all the feedback, and as members involved on this session, we will keep you completely informed and updated on what we're doing and engage you throughout the journey. So moving on to the final bits then. So as a reminder, we have our AGM. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are registered for this already, taking place on the 13th of May. If you haven't registered, really appreciate if you could do that and go on our website to register accordingly. And just moving on to the next element, I just want to finish off with a video from our president, Helen Wiseman, who's going to give some closing remarks for us for this session.
Hello, I'm Helen Wiseman, Society President, and I'd like to thank you for joining us for this session today. I hope that you found it both interesting and informative. This is part of our ongoing commitment to get members more involved and listening to their views on the society that they own. I'm delighted to tell you that we've been nominated as Leading Co-op of the Year, and you can find out more about how to vote in this award at the end of the video. And finally, I look forward to our AGM on the 13th of May. I hope that you can join us, take part and vote on issues that matter, and find out how we are driving the success of your society, supporting our communities and working towards a better, fairer world. Thank you.
We have been nominated for Leading Co-op of the Year in the Co-op of the Year award. So we would encourage everybody where possible to vote for us following the information on the slide in front of me here, and would really appreciate your votes, because we're really proud to have been nominated for that, and your votes would really help us. I'd also like to thank Professor Gattrad for the work that has taken place through Walsall Against Plastic, and because Professor Gattrad provided some ideas there during that session, and I really do appreciate all the support and efforts that's gone on locally around that. So very much, and thanks for joining this call as well. And that leaves me to say thank you very much to everybody for your participation and involvement in this session. Really appreciate it, and your feedback will really help us shape our 5-year plans. So thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your evenings. I look forward to seeing you at our AGM on the 13th of May.